This is the project. So it features an interface that is remarkably similar to GitHub for those who have used it before. So it's divided into both publicly available and private prompts. You can share them within the team, you can build them, generate them, copy them, and seamlessly integrate them into your workflow. Then into the work sessions that we'll see in a moment. And basically, this specific panel groups together all the various prompts from my personal profile. A comprehensive dashboard has also been carefully set up to include public prompts, so you can, on any single prompt, easily add a star, mark it as a favorite. Fork the prompt directly to your account and suggest specific changes or even send it straight to the active session for immediate use. The session, which is the very core of PromptOps. So if we go in here, we're presented with an actual work tool. This is a professional tool that contains all of your active projects. Now I'll minimize these for a bit and let's focus on this area for a moment. So how exactly does this system work initially? You select the provider. Right now I have several installed on my computer, so they're all more or less working. So what exactly does it do? It allows you to enter a session name, as you might expect, and it also gives you the option to select. First, we select a folder, so we're essentially creating our new session or our workspace. When the software creates the name and lets you select a specific folder, so we're creating our session or our workspace. Once it creates the entire project, it automatically maps out and organizes everything that's in there. This is very important because it allows sharing a mapping within the providers that lets you, one, save tokens, two, to share the multi-provider context, because what does the provider itself do? It systematically gathers the information, links it to its own file. But if you use another provider, that provider obviously has to do the same thing with its own file. In this way, PromptOps tries to link all the providers and constructs and layer around the providers themselves. So let's say we're positioned at a level directly above the engine that the provider itself is. It's created the session, we're in here, and obviously it opens Claude Code directly for you. So now that we're inside the session, and we can begin to work right in here. Now, going back to what I said before, regarding those prompts we discussed, prompts can be used as quick actions directly within the session itself. So I created a specific one, for example, for the complete English translation of the front-end interface. I can run it right here in the main session. This is the main session. But I can also create several sub-agents so that the whole process is significantly faster and more efficient. With just one simple click, it is starting the sub-agent session for me and making everything work for me directly. I'll stop it now for obvious reasons. So this here allows you, in fact, to reuse previous prompts. However, we've also set up agents that perform specific actions. So these are defaults, they cannot be modified. Currently, you can seamlessly integrate various sub-agents for security, automated testing, code reviews, documentation, or even complex refactoring. And right here too, with just one simple click of your mouse, you can spawn it directly into the active session. I'll stop right here for a moment too, so it remembers exactly where we are for me. Regarding which sub-agents are currently active, I can instead choose to send a prompt directly in here to use it. So let's just say, for example, that I want to perform a full user registration process. Meanwhile, there are buttons with a ton of features that I won't be able to cover all at once, but I can significantly enhance and refine my prompt with AI, where it utilizes the initial input as a foundational sub-process, so to speak, to analyze and improve it. So by clicking right here, I can conveniently specify a short, medium, or even a deep optimization mode to improve my prompt to ensure the best possible output. So it directly writes the prompt for me, even if I write it in rather questionable language, because when you're working, in the end, it's very easy to get lost and write what's on your mind, but with pretty terrible grammar. And with the enhance feature, you can significantly improve this prompt. Next, you can choose the provider that is most relevant to your task, enter whether it's a new feature, a technical fix, or a bug report, and then send the agent directly to perform the necessary actions. But now let's take a closer look at how the sub-agent's prompt is structured. Right now, it works based on modes that we've set up. In this case, sprint mode is active, but we can add architect, detective, refactor, and paranoid modes. For example, to give you an idea, I don't know if you're familiar. Have you seen that popular repository that recently went viral, the Caveman one? The Caveman repository is a fascinating project that uses a unique prompt entry mode. Basically, you tell it to act like a prehistoric caveman, and it responds just like a caveman would. So it strips away all of the articles, pronouns, and all the extra parts of the prompt, leaving only the core words. In this case, it saves tokens. The same concept, the same principle is used for these modes here. Activating paranoid mode allows you to remain safe and risk-free at all times. This means that every action that happens within the sub-agent environment is performed with the highest level of security and protection protocols. Or it asks first what's going to happen. This allows you, in fact, to work with a different peace of mind depending on what you choose. I don't know if I've made myself clear, but there's also the option to do a custom config. So we want maximum reasoning, we want zero verbosity, so we're back to the caveman thing. And then we can do a whole bunch of stuff like zero risk, which is the paranoid mode I was describing earlier. So what did we do? We integrated the same caveman principle into PromptOps. So inspired by caveman, we have the option to activate an eco mode that lets you save tokens. This helps you save on your token consumption. But then there's also a comprehensive and robust efficiency system that we have managed internally, which allows us to effectively reduce usage by storing context in a dedicated PromptOps folder that is git ignored during use, allowing you to save all the necessary tokens. A Codegraph component is also in development, which allows us to connect all the dots and ensure that the token savings are even greater. And this is a pretty important feature, which is the reason for the viral video I was telling you about earlier. What else does it do? It serves as a repository for all the commands that are within the project, because frequently and consistently within Claude Code or Codex sessions, it is often the case that we enter development level commands that are injected directly into the appropriate cloud service provider. So if we're on cloud and want to open the project, we're usually accustomed to using commands like npm run start. If we type this npm run start within the provider itself, we consume a ton of useless tokens. So you might be wondering, what does PromptOps do? Whenever I execute a specific command within the system, what does it do? It detects that there's a command and I can decide whether to proceed with the AI. You might ask, what is the point of doing this? Let's just run it in the terminal. But sometimes when we need to do builds, there are errors, and a good provider like Claude Code resolves a whole range of issues for us. So it could be useful, but if I don't need that logic here, I can just do a run in terminal and avoid using it. It started now. This was an example project, so it handled certain situations without obviously launching in the browser certain things. And there are a whole series of systems within PromptOps that let you do a ton of interesting stuff. Then obviously there are various modes. The code editor mode has also been added in, so I can explore the project and verify things are correct. Currently, the coding system is utilized quite infrequently in our workflow. It is important to note that we're realizing after a full decade of intensive software development anyway on daily code, that we're currently looking at the code very little, in the sense that we might intervene in some specific situations. But generally, the sophisticated tools we have available eliminate a massive amount of manual labor and also take away our comprehensive view of the code as a whole. We've also added a variety of other highly interesting and useful modes, such as assets. In here, let me go straight into the PromptOps assets section. I can conveniently place your digital assets directly into a designated folder to paste them, and then have the service provider automatically process them for you. If I select one, in fact, I can put a prompt directly on the path loaded in PromptOps assets and have the provider process them. If I select one, in fact, I can put a prompt directly on the path loaded in PromptOps assets where precisely a certain situation occurs. And I can run a sub-agent on top of them. So there's asset management it is possible that you could be using graphic layouts to perform the coding configuration of a web interface or something that is very similar to this type. We then implemented a whole series of situations that can be useful to us because all this, as I was saying before, is used within the team. So we oriented it and thought of it for the public too. Later, I'll also show you some numbers. But theoretically, this here is an internal work tool that we extended to the public. only because precisely there was some demand that was coming in handy from many points of view. So we have successfully implemented an intelligent Git system, also for the specific purpose of generating AI commit messages. So I can carefully review and stage exactly what my changes are. And by clicking this little button right here, now it will take a short while because there's always the usual talk of the process and it doing things on its own. And it generates a message automatically via AI, specifically via your provider that you chose within the session. And this here is incredibly convenient because I can have a clean Git history with commit messages that are auto-generated by the system itself. This is very interesting. Then there's the whole SSH part. This part here, obviously, the connections happen inside your machine. They aren't put in the cloud because behind PromptOps, I always remind you, there's a cloud system. There is actually a real-time system that gives you the ability to store sessions, but that obviously will not have any impact on what happens locally. Other interesting tools are Docker, the integration with the database. I'd avoid exploring them all. Maybe if you feel like it, you can try them directly. Another interesting thing is the intent mode. The intent mode is designed to create and generate a plan for what the tool is or the feature we want to go and implement. To give you an example of how this works, consider things like user registration, involving both the front end and the back end. It allows you to generate a plan, and using the same reasoning as the commit messages, it prepares things with a bit of time underneath. Furthermore, it essentially sets up the sub-agents that start automatically when we ask it to handle a specific scenario. So there is the comprehensive list of specific prompts that are sent out to the system, but starting from a user registration functionality written in a somewhat primitive fashion, we managed to create a sophisticated workflow with agents that meticulously structure and organize the entire detailed plan for you. So what does it do? It starts checking everything, starts the changes, front end and back end, and then finally it detected that it needs to do an integration. Because if you develop the back end and then the front end, someone will have to integrate it with when they work together. And so this tool is also very interesting. One last point I want to mention on this specific topic, not to go on for too long, is the auto approve feature. This is a mode that might seem a bit destructive or risky from some points of view, but for many others, it can be incredibly convenient because it works completely autonomously. So if we launch, for example, security, we can set it to auto approve. We turn it off right here. And as you can see, it essentially goes to work in total autonomy. Whenever it is asked by Claude Code what action to take, it will respond autonomously, and it even knows exactly when to stop. This process, which begins with a brief technical preamble, basically utilizes a dedicated tail service that constantly monitors everything happening locally, always running on the sub-agent, and whenever it finds a new message, it gives a positive response. However, we've also added AI mode, which essentially means that it reads the response. The provider itself directly analyzes it and gives a highly comprehensive and sensible answer, so the provider can seamlessly interact with itself. And now I'm going to stop it here and close. So this, let's say, is the entire comprehensive work context, the complete essential framework that allows us to effectively work on our projects and that several people are starting to use. These people are about 300, so 295 users, 22 registered teams. A bit of context is starting to build around the system. There are 550 downloads, and fortunately, they keep going up. The service has a sophisticated technology behind it that we have always presented to our clients as skeleton. We work a lot with our own code bases already tested and already used in the past, and it's built on this foundation, obviously enriched, modified, and updated. So there's a whole series of issues we track. The number of hours is very interesting because this number of hours was recorded since April 19th. So in about 10 days, nearly 1,000 hours of work have already been created on this system. There are currently a large number of people, of active users who are online right now. And to conclude this presentation, I wanted to show you this sort of interesting gamification because we've recently introduced a new pro mode. This is necessary because if by some mistake, which is nearly impossible for it to actually happen, but if by any chance it started working, obviously we have to cover the substantial server costs and so on. There are about 50 different people actively using the software for an average of 7 full hours every single day. So this specific data set is also very interesting. And we've basically built this ranking based a bit on a common practice that's becoming increasingly popular across America, which is known as token maxing, a concept which in various companies basically quantifies performance. And you could maybe even establish a gamification system for your developers, monitoring the number of prompts and tokens they use within their daily work context. So this leaderboard, partly to make it fun and partly to help spread the word, gives the top 3 most active users with the most prompts at the end of the month a set of professional subscription days: 90, 60, and 30. They're actually overtaking me now, so I'll be off the podium soon. But theoretically, this system involves 16 different nationalities and currently has 53 participants out of the 300 users we saw earlier. Let's say this is the overview, more or less complete, of the software that we're currently building. We'll keep working on it, and now we're going to do some releases. Obviously, we are being a bit more cautious here, if we even want to call it that. It is actually one of the very few specific products that we are fully able to deploy and update regularly. We often do this on Fridays because obviously the professional developers who use it clearly do not work on Saturdays and Sundays. So Friday, which usually is not a standard release date for most teams, instead becomes a very productive day for PromptOps. A good time to push the updates. So this is, let's say, the complete overview.
Thank you very much, Luca. In the meantime, I'll ask the participants if they have any questions to let us know or to just jump right in. I'll enable you anyway, so that if you want to, let's say, unmute yourselves and participate, you can easily do so. And I'll ask you a few questions myself out of curiosity. You obviously take them as questions from a designer who's just approaching this world, right? I mean, it's very interesting, in my opinion, the topic